show the picture, that slide, the map of Ukraine after the introduction is over.
Good evening and a warm welcome to one and all present here. First of all, thank you, sir, for this third live session. I'm profusely elated to take an opportunity to introduce our chief guest, Major General Sudhakar ji. He is the son of Sri Blade Purnachandra ji, a freedom fighter of repute from Razalpur, Balasur, Odisha, a recipient of Tamra Patra from the President of India, and Ms. late Janja Mani Devi, the general officer, was commissioned into Mahar Regiment of the Indian Army in June 1983. An alumnus of Sainik School Bhubaneswar, NDA Kadakotsla, the SSC Wellington, CDM Secunderabad, and NDC New Delhi, the general has nearly 4 decades of experience of command of troops in India and abroad. The general is one of the very few in the Indian Army who had the distinction of having dealt with all the three sectors of the northern Indo-China border successfully. He also had been a military observer in United Nations Observer Mission in Sierra Leone, UNOMSIL, country of West Africa. Awarded with several decorations, including a Visis Seva Medal from the President of India for distinguished service. Not only a frontline leader, both in the army as well as in the overseas corporate as a president and the CEO in multinational company in Oman. He continues to deliver talk on regional security perspective of India in premier institution in India and abroad. Former colonel of the Mahar Regiment for 3 years, the general officer is a strategic security expert who comments on geopolitics and strategy in print and digital as well as in the mainstream national TV channels, mainly on Afghanistan, Pakistan, and China. Currently, the general officer is pursuing his doctoral thesis on Indo-China border. Today, he is going to talk about the ongoing Russia-Ukraine crisis. Without any further delay, now over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Soumya. Thank you for that wonderful introductory remark that you have given. And without loss of much time, before we get going, ladies and gentlemen, may I just know, Vignesh, from your chat box, can you make a guess as to how many are participating today?
Sir, around 55 plus, sir.
Yeah, I have the record of 55. Okay, so firstly, hearty welcome to one and all in the group. And Vignesh, I must compliment you. It is on your insistence and request that I have changed my schedule because I'll not be available here on 11th. Although I told you that whatever is to happen will happen in next 7 to 10 days' time, as far as Ukraine is concerned. Why I told this is basically because take your mind back, ladies and gentlemen, before we get onto the geography, historical perspective, or the ethnic divide, and other aspects of where Ukraine is and what all impact will it have on the region. Just take your mind back to 2008 and 2014. Those of you who have been keeping track of the current affairs would bear me out. In the year 2008, ladies and gentlemen, when the Olympics was going on in Beijing, and after the hosting the opening ceremony in 2008 Summer Games, the Russian troops had invaded or moved into Georgia. This I would like to draw parallel and keep it in the back of the mind. The president of Russia at that time was Dmitry Medvedev. Putin was the prime minister, and Putin had given a very stern statement from Beijing Olympics that appeared to define the destiny and the country's position as far as the invasion into the Georgia is concerned. In 2014, ladies and gentlemen, the Russian troops had streamed into Crimean Peninsula days after Putin returned to Moscow from Winter Olympics in a place in Russia called Sochi. And the invasion was a response to the ouster of Ukraine's democratically elected, legitimate people's representative, Ukraine's president Viktor Yanukovych, in late February 2014 during the games itself. And Putin later reclaimed Crimea as part of Russia. So with this, parallels I would like to carry forward the discussion today. And so, first and foremost thing that I wish to share with you all, ladies and gentlemen, is firstly, let's see where Ukraine is. Is it possible for you to show the map, Vignesh? I don't know how you share in your Telegram method. Can you share it? Because unless they have a look at the map, they will not be able. Yeah, that's fine. Now, are all of you able to see? I presume that you can take a look as to where Ukraine is and how is Russia disposed of all around. So, firstly, ladies and gentlemen, let's start with the crisis. Why the crisis in Ukraine? If you recall, after the Second World War was over, the beginning of Cold War was marked by 1945, end of 1945 or so. The Cold War continued till 1991. And in 1991, USSR or Soviet Union had disintegrated. And if you recall, USSR at that point in time is to have 15 republics. To save on time, I'll just avoid repeating, but those of you, because I have been getting off and on requests on my talks on regional security perspective of India, so quite a few participants have been requesting me, which are these 15 republics of Soviet Union? Russia, Ukraine, Georgia, Belarusia, Uzbekistan, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Latvia. So I suppose these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There are two more you can add. But as long as the Ukraine is there, so total 15 republics used to constitute or form the Soviet Union. So after the collapse of Soviet Union, which is to be called as part of perestroika or glasnost, opening up of Soviet Union, all these countries, they became independent in different timeline. Ukraine became independent in the year 1991 on 24th of August. So after the independence, let's take a quick look as to what are the borders. Which all countries does this Ukraine have borders with? As you see, look at the map. On the north, you have Belarus. Belarus is a pro-Russian country, independent republic. Next, you have in the northeast is Russia, to the east is Russia, to southeast is Russia. And like I have told you in the part of the preamble, Crimea, which earlier used to be part of Ukraine, has been invaded and captured, annexed rather, by Russia in the year 2014. And there is another small little island known as Sevastopol. So that also is under Russia now. Now, further to the southwest of Ukraine, you see Romania. They have a border with it. And further north of Romania, you have a country called Hungary. And north of Hungary is the Slovakia. And north of Slovakia to the northwest is Poland. It is very important for all of you, ladies and gentlemen, to understand which all countries are having borders with Ukraine today. As you see that Belarus and Russia, they cover almost three cardinal directions: the north, the east, and the south. Three cardinal directions which are already with Russia. And all the resources that Russia has, the military resources, they are poised all around in these three cardinal directions. Now, what is the problem? Before we go to the problem, firstly, understand that the length of the border is approximately 6,992.98 kilometers. The capital of this country is Kiev. Kiev is located on the banks of the Dnieper River. And if you take your mind back a couple of years back, almost all of you would have heard about Chernobyl incident. Chernobyl is north of Kiev, between Belarus and this place, and not very far off. And the population of this country is approximately, going by the population clocometer, it's around 4.3 crores. Now, this 4.3 crores is the total population, inclusive of, this Crimea, Sevastopol. There are two other small little republics which have declared independence. I'll come to their names subsequently. It's known as Donbas region, Luhansk city, Donetsk, and Holiva. All these places, they are partly under Russia or partly become independent and partly occupied by the rebels. So, if you exclude all these populations of all these places, the total population of Ukraine comes down to 3.7 crores or 37 million. Okay. Now, what about the ethnicity? Ladies and gentlemen, the majority are Ukrainians, 77.8%. The minor ethnic class composition is around 17.3%, which comprises of the Russians and other religion. The language is generally majorly spoken is Ukrainian language. They understand Russian. They also write in Russian language. And given the fact that this used to be the part and parcel, an integral part of Russia a few years back. Okay, so during the war in Donbas, the Ukrainian government has also lost control of portions of Donbas region, including major cities such as Luhansk and Donetsk and Holika. So I've already covered less these locations. If you minus the population, it comes to 3.37 million or 3.7 crores. Now, what about the geography? As you will see, the geography, it is generally characterized by regular plains with average height above the sea level being 175 meters or 574 feet. It is surrounded by mountains to its west and extreme south. Extreme south, when I say it is towards the Crimea. Crimea is located in the Black Sea. Okay. And it has got temperate continental climate with cold and snowy winters and warm summers. It is important for all of you. Most of you will be thinking as to why General Sudhakar is talking about the geography and other issues which are irrelevant. No. To understand the subject in true perspective, these small points, if you join the dots, they give you a very comprehensive, understandable narrative. So therefore, I'm sharing all this with you. The right time to visit Ukraine. Don't plan a visit this year. Things are very hot. You don't know which side the conflict is going to tilt. It's generally in the summer season. It is June to August. The central Ukraine is covered by plateaus and fertile plains, hilly areas, and the shrublands. Mind you, ladies and gentlemen, Ukraine is one of the largest producers of wheat. Russia and Ukraine, they form one of the largest bowl of it. They actually export wheat to all over the world. Very good quality, cheaper rate. Black Sea and coastal lowlands and the Sea of Azov. Black Sea and Sea of Azov. You see on the map where it is written just right inside of Crimea is Black Sea. It's a white oblong kind of a feature. And further north of it, where that tank is marked, the turret of the tank is pointing towards a white patch. That is the Sea of Azov, ladies and gentlemen. The predominant religion in Ukraine, practiced by almost half the population, is Eastern Orthodoxy. Basically Christians, and Christians are divided into two different types. One is the Eastern Orthodoxy. Historically, most of the Ukrainians, they belong to Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and they used to be called under the Kiev Patriarchate. And though the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, Moscow Patriarchate is also equally important and respected. 78% of the total population, they identify the Orthodox as compared to 71% in Russia. Christianity is the major religion which is practiced by more or less a very high percentage, like I told you, around 78%. You also have Islam, you have Judaism, they coexist. And the entire country, ladies and gentlemen, are something like us, but in their parlance, they call it under different names. there are 27 regions. It's divided into 27 regions, like uh, states, if you may call it. Okay. So they are further states are further divided into districts, equivalent to districts, and divisions, subdivisions, etc., under different names. So what is the issue then? Why Ukraine is become suddenly the epicenter of violence now? Ladies and gentlemen, in the year 1991, I hope I am audible, Soumya.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay. Vignesh, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the disintegration of Soviet Union had taken place in the year 1991. That was they call it, that marked the end of Cold War. But actually speaking, if you go, since you all are preparing for CDS and other competitive examination, if you have to respond to a question, it is not the collapse of Soviet Union which actually marked the end of the Cold War. Cold War started after the Second World War in the year 1945. What marked the end of Cold War was the strategic arms limitation talks between US and USSR, or the Soviet. So that strategic arms limitation talks, basically the primary aim was to reduce the weapons of mass destruction held by both the erstwhile superpowers. As you all know, that prior to or before the disintegration of the Cold War, there used to be a bipolar world. One was the US, the other was USSR. And US used to preach and practice democracy and capitalism, whereas USSR used to preach and practice its communism and dictatorship. So there is a huge difference. So between two poles, each was trying to contain the size and the expansion and the influence of the other. Okay, so Russia was trying to contain and counter. Like, for example, if you take your mind back to 1962 Operation Indochina War, that is the nearest which must be triggering thoughts after we lost the golden voice of our country, Lata Mangeshkar. When she's sung a song related to 1962 arms. You remember the USSR, the Cuban crisis, the Cuban, facing the east coast of America, the Cuban crisis. USSR had full control of Cuba at that point in time, just to contain and control the activities of the US. That was the degree of the communism and dictatorship way back in 1962. So similarly, what I'm trying to bring out here is that after the strategic arms limitation talks or the Cold War had ended, there are many things which have taken place. I think maybe I have told you, or maybe to a different group of people, I have shared when I was explaining them as to how and why Afghanistan has taken place, who are the Talibans, how has Al-Qaeda taken birth, how is the ISIS Khorasan expanding in the Middle East, and what made US to come into Afghanistan. Till 9/11, they were not accepting that terrorism is an international threat, but after 9/11, they themselves joined. Okay, yes, terrorism is definitely not a potential, it's a real threat. So when they came into Afghanistan, a lot of things were happening. They came into Afghanistan in 2001, but alongside, they were also drawn into Iraq. They were drawn into the Syria battle. Okay, and in the year 2011, Osama bin Laden was neutralized at Abbottabad. So while I bring out this narrative between 91 to 2011 and thereafter, you also have to keep in mind how it has been impacting. The global geopolitics has been impacting the security at the national level, that is India. After 1971, if you remember, liberation of Bangladesh, Pakistan, it didn't actually go down too well in Pakistan. Pakistan was determined to come what may. They will make sure that India is bled to death with 1,000 cuts. So anything and everything was being adopted by them. So they started with the K1 mission, Kashmir. Then the K2 mission was Punjab. Punjab, they could not succeed. They failed miserably. And the Khalistan movement. Then the Kashmir movement started off in 91. Who are these people in 91? They are the same after the Russians had been pushed out from Afghanistan with the help of Mujahids, uh, who were being trained, being supported by Pakistan with the money and the material provided by US. US was not directly involved. So after the Soviets had been pushed out of Afghanistan, Mujahids had nothing to do. So these are the same people who formed groups of militant outfits known as Al Qaeda. They spread all over the world, towards West Africa, towards the entire Middle East, to elsewhere in Europe, towards the South Asian subcontinent. So the Taliban took birth in 1994. Now, these are all issues which may be appearing to be irrelevant, but in geopolitics, if you have to understand the global perspective, you have to keep in mind what was happening elsewhere. Okay, so with that, ladies and gentlemen, I had told you after the Cold War, after the Second World War was over, in the year 1949, there was a group which came into being. It is known as North Atlantic Treaty Organization. This North Atlantic Treaty Organization, it was signed on 4th of April 1949. As on today, they have 30 members. Essentially, when it started with North America and Europe to constitute. For example, as on today, you have US, you have UK, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands. You have Norway, Portugal, Greece, Turkey, Spain, West Germany from 1955 to 1990. Okay, so different countries have joined in different timelines. Since 1997, now 1997 turned out to be a kind of a watershed year. It was a kind of a turning point. From 1997 onwards, this NATO, what is the job of the NATO? NATO job was to bring all these like-minded countries together and ensure, form a group, a coherent collective group, coordinated group, and apply the resources whenever required to ensure security and safety. There is one central theme of NATO that an attack on any single country will be taken as an attack on other countries. So all of them come together to fight against that attack on one country. Now, what happened in 1997? You see, in 1997, this NATO, contrary to many understanding and agreements, they started expanding to include the former Soviet Union states, such as, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, Poland, Bulgaria, Estonia, you must have heard of. If you blow up the map and see, they used to come under the part of the Eastern Europe or the Warsaw Pact countries. Warsaw Pact countries, they were actually pro-Russian. So they started influencing these countries, Latvia, Lithuania, Albania, Croatia, Montenegro in 2017, they joined NATO. Then North Macedonia, they joined NATO in 2020. So contrary to the understanding and the commitment, these organizations, these countries, they started joining, or the NATO started influencing and accepting them with an open door policy to expand their strength to whatever they were. I think they started with 13 or 12 members. As on today, there are almost about 30 members. And there are 3 more members who are aspiring to join them. Who are these 3 members? These 3 members are Bosnia-Herzegovina, Georgia, and Ukraine. So then how do you correlate it with the violence which is unfolding gradually in Ukraine? So there is the year 1999. The real seeds were sown in 1999. After the disintegration of the Soviet Union, the NATO started and decided to admit these new members, like I shared with you a little while back, from Central and Eastern Europe. Although at that point in time, Russia had actually very vehemently had protested. But Russia at that point in time, after having disintegrated in 1991, was very weak economically, politically, militarily. It was very weak. I still remember I was out on a UN mission during that period. The Russians, they had left the armed forces. They were looking for jobs outside. They used to come to UN because they were not getting salary. So in UN mission, they used to draw salary, send that money home, and that is how the people at their place of birth, they used to survive. That was the kind of situation. And I was in Sierra Leone, so you can well understand and correlate. Now, what happened was there was a pact which was signed in the year 1997 with NATO. By having signed this pact, NATO was committed to a few of the agreements, few of the commitments. And what are these commitments? The pact actually did not explicitly prohibit NATO expansion, but NATO agreed not to deploy troops or nuclear weapons on the territories of the new members. The new members that I have just shared with you, pro-Russian or ex-Soviet Union members or the Warsaw Pact members. Subsequently, NATO expanded eastwards contrary to their commitment in stages, in an incremental manner, to enlist most former Warsaw Pact members. And in the year 2008, like I have already given out in the preamble, Russia invaded Georgia because Georgia started realigning its boundary and accepting the European Union. And much of these cases are basically by different methods of warfare without fighting a war. They have been trying to win over the people, influence or subvert the minds of the people, take them onto the respective side, regardless of their past affiliation and identities. So in the 2008, when Georgia was being influenced by the NATO forces and the European Union, that is the time when they were realigning the boundary to include two smaller states. That is the time when Russia invaded. In 2014, I have already told you that when the government, the legitimately elected president of Ukraine, the name I have shared with you, when he was being ousted with the influence of the Western power. Who are the Western powers? There are three important components. One is the NATO itself. The second is the European Union. European Union, as you know, has got 27 members. And most importantly is the superpower, that is the United States of America. Okay, so all these three components, when they put pressure, they manage to oust or throw out the legitimately elected president of Ukraine. Now, it's a different issue. Whether the president at that point in time was, obviously, you would understand, intelligent enough to understand the president was pro-Russian. So Russia, having lost out quite a few of its neighbors, which are integral part of Soviet Union prior to the disintegration, obviously will become very. So therefore, what is happening now is that it is a kind of a existential security need of Russia. Okay, so I'll not draw parallel and say that Jammu Kashmir or the Kashmir Valley is an existential need of Pakistan. No, Pakistan has created problems for itself. In one of the interviews in one of the important channels, I said that the birth of Pakistan, right from the birth, Pakistan as a nation state had a genetic disorder. So that cannot be compared with this situation. So the Russia's perspective is the crisis is not all about Ukraine, but about renegotiating existing security interest with the West. Whereas the West, politically driven by the ideal of people's right to self-determination, is clearly finds Russia's demands unacceptable. So while the Western powers, that is the NATO, the European Union, and the US, they are oriented towards driving the people's self-determination and their preference, and they would like to influence the democratic norms and their way of life onto these border states, and particularly Ukraine, which is not going down too well. So far, so good, ladies and gentlemen. A word about Ukraine when it is to be part of Russia. Mind you, that much of the defense equipment also is to be imported, and the hub of defense industry in Soviet Union used to be in Ukraine. Much of the nuclear arsenals they used to be deployed in Ukraine. They have been regrouped and reorbited, and there have been locations have been resited. Consequent to the disintegration, now the full control of the nuclear weapons and the arsenals and the missiles, ballistic missiles, and all these are directly under the control of Russia. But you must understand that Ukraine is not a pushover either. Now coming to the other aspects. What is the economic mainstay? The economic mainstay of Ukraine is as much parallel, and mostly it is aligned with the Russia. Russia is one of the largest producers of gas and oil. Russia has recently signed some agreement with China 2 days back, that is on 4th of February, for providing gas and oil. It is trying to find alternate markets. You know, there used to be a pipeline, almost about close to 37% of total requirement of gas in the European Union goes from Russia. There is a pipeline existing which passes through Ukraine, and the transit charges are almost about $2 billion per annum, which is paid by Russia. And given the crisis which is evolving in Ukraine, they have made another pipe from Russia directly to Germany, and cutting across, going through through the Belarus and north of Belarus. So thereby having direct connection with Germany. It is called a Nord Stream 2. So similarly, if you study the geography of Russia, Russia is devoid. It does not have a warm water port. One of the primary reasons also could be kept in mind why Russia invaded Crimea. Leave aside what happened in 2014, the ouster of the president is one factor. The other one is all these years, Russia has been trying to, eyeing on Crimean Peninsula because it gives an opening to warm water port of Black Sea. And Black Sea is further connected with the Mediterranean Sea through a narrow area like Sumatra we have, or Malacca Strait. So it is further connected with the Mediterranean, and thereafter it goes on to the Atlantic and the Pacific. Okay, so these are the few aspects I thought I must share with you, ladies and gentlemen. The per capita of Russia as on today is almost close to $11,000, and that of Ukraine is around $3,000. So you could keep that in the back of your mind, and 3,100 is Ukraine, Russia is 11,700. And also the highest power gas reserve that Russia has is, as per the latest statistics, is 48,938 billion cubic meters in the world. It is more than 70% of country's gas reserve is held by a company. It is a state-owned energy giant known as Gazprom. Russia supplies over 1/3 of Europe's natural gas, which I have shared with you, ladies and gentlemen. US sanctions over any conflict could disrupt that supply. Keep this in the mind. If there is a sanction, mind you, from 2014 itself, the Americans have imposed sanction against Russia, but that doesn't seem to have any kind of tangible impact on any of its actions. So if Russia carries out sanction now in view of the current ongoing conflict, Russia could twist make leverage by disconnecting or disrupting the supply of oil and gas to European Union. They're in the middle of winter now. So then opening of, I have told you, Gazprom's Nord Stream 2, it is 11 billion gas pipeline across Baltic Sea, which I have told you. north of Belarus, going directly from Russia, bypassing Ukraine, and it deprives Ukraine of almost about $2 billion in transit fees, which Russia annually pays. Also, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that Russia has some of the largest oil reserves at 80 billion barrels, that is 5% of world's total oil reserve. So these are the few aspects. And what does Ukraine have? Ukraine has 395 million barrel oil reserve, 349 billion cubic meters gas available, and Ukraine is at the crossroad of West and Russia. So these are the few aspects I thought I must share with you, ladies and gentlemen. The bilateral trade between Russia and, mind you, these two countries, they were the largest trading partners. And however, from 2014 onwards, the bilateral trade of Ukraine has come down. Ukraine and Russia has come down from $50 billion in 2011 to $11 billion in 2019. And both are, I have told you, major grain exporters, and both use the ports located in Black Sea. Military, Russia has spent around $61.7 billion on military, that is 11.4% of government spending, which is very, very high. Ukraine has spent around 5.9 billion on its military, which is 8.8% of government spending. NATO allies have stepped up support for the Kyiv, and additional troops are moving into the Ukraine. And on 30th of January 2022, that was the last Sunday, US had sent a defense package worth about $200 million. As on today, ladies and gentlemen, the force ratio between Ukraine and Russia are disposed of in the manner as I'm going to share with you now. Active troops or personnel, Ukraine has got 209,000, Russia has got 900,000. Okay. Reserve persons, Ukraine has 900,000 and Russia has got 2 million. It has got 2 lakh, 20 lakhs. Artillery pieces, Ukraine has got 2,040 artillery guns. Russia has got 7,571 artillery guns. Armored vehicles, Ukraine has 12,363 armored vehicles. Russia has got 30,122 armored vehicles. Tanks, Ukraine has 2,596 tanks. Russia has 12,420 tanks. Attack helicopters, Ukraine has 34 attack helicopters. Russia has 544 attack helicopters. Fighter aircrafts, ladies and gentlemen, Ukraine has 98 fighter aircrafts, whereas Russia has 1,511 fighter aircrafts. Military spending I have shared with you already. Ukraine spends this year, they have spent 5.9 billion or 8.8% of the total government spending. Russia has spent $61.7 billion, that is percentage wise, it is 11.4 spending. So these are the few comparative statistics I thought I'll share with you. As things stand today, they're hotting up. My personal take on the whole issue is that in case the conflict, the war breaks out, the cost of a war breaking out will be a heavy penalty on Russia. Russia's economy, I am not say that they are in doldrums, but they are not healthy either. They are going through, they are feeling the pinch of it and going through a tough time. A few years back, if you recall, a prime minister was there at Vladivostok. I think it was in 2017, if I'm not wrong, 17 or 18. We had given our line of credit of $1 billion. Whether the money has been transferred or not, that's a different issue. Because the Russian, they are going through a very critical stage of self-sustenance. Okay, so therefore, the economy being where it is today, they will not be able to afford any kind of conflict taking place in Ukraine. Second, US and the Western countries, if they impose some degree of sanction on US, it is also going to be at the detriment of their survival, because the Europe today cannot survive. The oil and the gas which the Russians are supplying directly to Europe today, European Union, is at a cheaper rate, turning out to be cheaper. It is accessible, and it is available by virtue of the geographical contiguity. Third and most important point, ladies and gentlemen, to me, my personal assessment is that all the activities which are unfolding from Russian side are done with an aim to push the edge, to enhance its negotiating capability with the European Union, with the NATO and the Western powers, so that the lines and the agreements and the commitments which were formulated way back in 1997 to 99, they are redrawn, they are reformulated, and the expansion of the NATO forces towards the east is stopped. One of the primary demands of Russia is that the NATO influence and expansion should stop. It should not come into Ukraine. Having lost quite a few member states, Warsaw Pact member states and the ex-Soviet Union member states. So these, I feel, are genuine, very, very legitimate points, but I would refrain from making any kind of official comment on this. These are my personal views, informal personal views. Each one of you is open to any kind of your current thought process. Most important out of all this is that the Ukraine has been demanding surrender of Crimean Peninsula, which I don't think Russians will give back. It's after a once in lifetime. After all, they asked for it, so they have gone in, and they're unlikely to surrender Crimea back to Ukraine and the Sevastopol. I don't think it is going to take place. So, however, there are examples of reconciliation which has taken place way back in Germany. You have the Georgia, where the Allied forces and the Russian forces, they used to coexist. Now, similarly, you have a couple of other countries in the Europe where some kind of agreement has been made, where neither the NATO nor the Russian forces are there inside the country. So similar kind of agreement could take place, and the peace could be ensured. As on today, in past 2 days, there are very hectic negotiations which are on one after another. Parleys are taking place, and there is a new pact possibly which is evolving gradually. Maybe my take is that the conflict as we envisage may not unfold. It will take a while. It will linger on like this. Russia will keep building up the pressure, and so as to generate a favorable outcome of the negotiations with the West. But the point to be kept in mind is, in the global geopolitics, is that day before yesterday, Putin and Xi Jinping, they have shaken hands, they have given commitment to each other, they have discussed their own way of democracy. Mind you, China and Russia put together, they form the largest communist country with dictatorship. They have the advantage of taking decisions and also giving orders for compliance of the orders. So the decision making and the execution of the decisions are faster, and two of them are also the permanent members of the security P5 security members of the United Nations Security Council. This will definitely have an impact. Also, alongside, do not lose sight of the fact what is happening in Indochina or Indo-Pacific Ocean. In the Indo-Pacific Ocean, there are 5 flashpoints. One is the East China Sea, which is hugging the borders of the Japan, Senkaku Island, and the second one is the South China Sea. You know, China, right since 1983, has gone in to create artificial islands, illegally claim the territories which actually do not belong to China, and they have already enhanced their footprints. They have tried out successfully the same method they are trying to do in Arunachal Pradesh. It is called as cartographic aggression. They have also have developed military bases along the first line of islands, first tier of islands, and they are all out to grow or expand beyond the first line of islands further east of Indochina Sea towards the West Pacific, towards the second line of islands. So, and therefore the presence of, the formation of AUKUS and um, uh, the Quad, which is comprising of US, Australia, India, and Japan, and AUKUS essentially comprising of US, you have UK and Australia. Basically, that AUKUS is a military alliance, and Quad is a kind of a economic alliance. But I don't buy that game. Otherwise, Malabar, which is being conducted, cannot be basically economic. This is on the facade of economic grouping. We are enhancing the capability, military capability in the coalition. What is the basic threat? Why such a move is taking place? Just keep in mind that annually the trade cargo which passes through this Indochina Sea is approximately $5 trillion. So if you convert that into some kind of a percentage or some ratio, it comes to almost about one third the requirement of the global oil supply passes through this. Almost about 50% of the containers pass through this. Almost close to 67 to 70% of the global trade is passing through this particular channel. So if you do not have the freedom of navigation, what is the problem? The problem is China is imposing, restricting the freedom of navigation. So therefore, to ensure there is an UNCLOS, there is an agreement which is signed by most of the countries in the world, all the UN members, majority of the members, UNCLOS. And as per the UNCLOS, no country is supposed to restrict free movement of their vessels or the ships through any channel. They're supposed to ensure that freedom of navigation is given to everyone. So safe, secure sea lanes of communication is the central issue of the UNCLOS and the Indochina Sea. Since it is not happening, there is a threat always. And the neighboring states like Philippines and all, to whom we have just sold a couple of BrahMos, they are being intimidated, they are being threatened, and also Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, all these countries. Plus the BRI project, which is expanding, as you all know, China has already invested money in 120 countries, which is approximately 60% of the population, total population of the world. It's a different issue. 42 of them have raised their hands. They're unable to, they've fallen into the debt trap diplomacy. And there are other techniques through which China is trying to assert its preeminence and take over this country. Maldives is one of them. Sri Lanka, we are trying to rescue. Bangladesh is gradually falling into it. Myanmar, military junta, wherever Chinese are trying to go in, they're triggering, the coup, military coup. The democracies are being replaced by the military juntas, and that actually enables China to pump in money and have their footprint expanded. So this is a very hidden thing going on in the backdrop of ongoing pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, so this is what I have given you, a kind of a perspective what is happening in the Ukraine and around. Should you have any questions, you are most welcome. I finished.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, give your name and the location from where you are calling up. I'll try my best to answer your question, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. Hello, sir. Myself, Aditya Ghosh, and I'm from Jaipur, sir.
Hello, Aditya. How are you? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Sir, first of all, sir, I appreciate the time you took out for us to give this valuable information to us.
Thank you. Thank you, Aditya.
Sir, my question is that do you think that Putin's plan is just to restrict the NATO's expansion to its border, or it's the Putin want to famously Putin stated that the fallout of USSR was a disaster in the recent century. So do you think the Putin is planning to restructure the USSR 2.0, if I say?
Okay, fine. Aditya, if I have understood your question, you're basically you want to know the, is Putin trying to restrict the expansion of the NATO or the West powers, or it is trying to compel US to restructure its response to the world order. Have I understood your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, there is a point in what you were saying, Aditya. Yeah, partly you are right. Given the fact that in Iraq and Afghanistan war, this 20-year conflict, this may not be known to many of us. There are almost about 9 lakh soldiers, officers and men of US Armed Forces. Um, they have become veterans, and these veterans are jobless today in the US. They have post-conflict traumatic disorders. They do not have sufficient money generated out of the second innings. The pension is not sufficient enough to. You see, they're the ones who have put pressure. That in this conflict, they spent something close to $8 trillion, $8 trillion in just 20 years. Out of 8 trillion, 2.3 trillion was spent on Afghanistan alone. Balance money in Iraq and in collapsing the caliphate, the ISIS caliphate. But when you see on the ground, there is no socio-economic development. There is no social. Yes, the SDI indices of Afghanistan, they have definitely taken a quantum jump. But who are the people who have benefited? It is the military industry of the US and the Western powers who are benefiting. They are hidden behind the screen. One. Secondly, these are the people who have put pressure on the administration of US that enough is enough. Let's about time. It's about time. Let's focus on the internal strengthening of our country. That is the US. Lot of the economy is in a downswing. The COVID pandemic has taken lots of lives. The number of people in the hospital, the treatment is not there. There is an internal law and order situation. The gun trafficking is in full swing. The drug trafficking is in full swing. Now, so the entire nation seems to be collapsing. It looks like America, as on today, is going through a very weak phase of its development and growth. You're right to an extent. So, taking advantage of this particular phenomena which is taking place, it's because of that they left Afghanistan the way they left abruptly. They have come under the pressure because of the veterans. They have put pressure on them that enough of bodies have been lost for remaking the nations, other nations. Let's remake our own nation. They're almost losing out the battle against the China, be it the artificial intelligence, be it autonomous support system, be it your satellite power, or the space factor, be it the cyber factor. The China has overtaken in almost everything. So you have a point towards that end, taking advantage of this weak phase of the growth and the strength of America. Perhaps US is trying to play a game in order to derive maximum benefit and commitment. You see how Trump behaved during his tenure. Wherever he said no, like there was a no to the waiver to Iran. Now Biden has come and he's lifted that waiver. Similarly, the strategic arms talks with the Russians had been put on cold storage. Now that has been revived. Similarly, you have the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Pact, which was signed amongst those 19 nations, that is being revived. So wherever Trump had said no, 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 now Biden has come back with yes, 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 just to bring in peace and harmony in the world order. Also give little time to the US economy to revive and to rebuild itself. You have a point in there, yes. Have I been able to answer your question, if not entirely, partially at least?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, I have also one more question.
Should you give
Should I ask?
Aditya? We'll come back in the second round. Let others also get a chance.
Oh, okay, okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, we'll come back. Don't worry, I'm here in Jaipur itself. You can contact me anytime. Yeah, others didn't find it interesting. Wasn't it informative enough? Yeah,
No, no, sir.
anybody?
That is full informative, but I think the persons are not been asking anything. That's not like the like you haven't you have given the full information, and we are glad that you are here to just give those information. And I don't have any question, but the thing is like that is my first attempt. Like I've
Just
been
give me your
here.
name, please. Your name and the place from where you are calling, please.
Yes, yes. My name is Ankur, and I am calling from like UP. I am from Lucknow, basically.
Hello,
Yes.
Ankur, how are you? Yeah, good to hear your voice. I was in Lucknow a few days back. We just come back from Lucknow.
Okay, that's pretty good, sir. And to just find here, like, how's your day in Lucknow, sir?
Oh, great. We went to attend the wedding of one of my colleagues. So we are both in quite a few conflict zone, and both of us survived. He took a bullet wound on his chest. He's surviving. So he was my adjutant when I was the commanding officer of my unit. So I told him that when your children get married, I'll be there for the wedding. So I was there, despite the
Okay,
fact that
that's
we drove down
good.
from here, Jaipur. It was a long drive, although driving yourself after retirement definitely was very exciting. Yeah, great stay there, and they made a documentary film. One of the channels has made a documentary film on my name, which is yet to be released because I need to go back again. It's a wonderful
Okay.
city, beautiful city. Yeah.
Yes, 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 absolutely, sir.
Yeah. Any questions that you have in the mind, any thought process?
No, sir, I don't have any questions. I have just got whatever you have said and just intuited that intuited all things as well. And I don't have any question yet. But that's pretty. That's very good that I just join this chat and have the conversation. What all you have done, what all things you have taken, you have given to the persons. Yes,
Yeah,
sir, I'm
Vinay,
glad.
one point should come to everyone's mind. What impact will it have in the global order if the battle or the conflict unfolds? The impact is already being felt on the ground. The prices of oil are going to shoot up like anything. Okay. So given the fact that Russia is one of the largest producers and suppliers of oil to Europe in oil and gas, the prices are definitely going to go up. It will be felt by the common man like you and me. The petrol and the diesel prices will go up for sure without any doubt. Yeah, anybody else, please?
So apart from the topic, can I ask something else? Like it's related to some defense era, but it's not like related to that Ukraine. So can I just
Yeah,
ask something?
definitely. Vinay, we'll come back to those points in the second round. Just hang on. Let's ask the participant. They're good numbers. Now it has gone down to 47, I can see.
Okay.
Anyone. Because Ukraine doesn't affect, had it been Pakistan or Myanmar or Bangladesh, perhaps the questions would have been flooding left, right, and center. Ukraine people are not able to conceive, perceive how directly or indirectly it is going to impact us. We have Indian students in Ukraine, by the way, okay, and so are the Ukrainian students. And when I was in military observer in Sierra Leone, we got surrounded. The military observers are not provided with any arms and weapons. There are protection party. The protection party, they were hit by the rebels. So there was an aircraft which came to evacuate us from a place in the Sierra Leone. It was being piloted by a Ukrainian pilot. So I'm talking to you. I'm very lucky that I was saved by a Ukrainian pilot. Me and my team, all of us, managed to make good the escape from a place called Bo, came to Freetown. From Freetown, we went to French Guinea. So it's a great escape. Maybe time permitting, I'll write a book on the same soon. Yeah. Anybody else? Any questions pertaining to Ukraine crisis?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm Amit and I'm speaking from Maharashtra itself. So my question was about can you elaborate the statements made by German Navy chief over here when he was in India and why Germany is not trying to actively participate in the war? Like even if they are making statements like we are with NATO and all that, but why are they not switching into the war zone?
Okay. I'll not get into the controversies. The chief is no longer the chief, as you all know. He's been sacked, should I say, from the armed forces. You see, Germany and Russia, as on today, they have different equations by virtue of the fact that 37% of their oil, the gas requirement for the day-to-day survival German at this point in time is in the peak of winter. Okay, during winter season, none of the European countries can survive unless the houses are kept warm. How do you keep the houses warm? The cheapest means is the gas. Okay, so where do the gas come from? Out of wherever they get from, be it Brazil or the Latin America, these places are far off places. The nearest place from where they have a assured kind of a supply of gas is Russia. And Russia, since Ukraine is creating a crisis, and it is inclined towards joining the European market or the European economy, as also the NATO forces, and since its dependence is proven beyond doubt on Russia, obviously it will not try to annoy Russia. Try to understand from the survival point of view. Today, you and me, if our survival is at stake, same Pakistan which is showing eyes and teeth to India, a couple of days or maybe months from now, maybe maximum, it is already on the knees. Had China not been there, it would have been coming to India with a begging bowl. That day is not very far. Your demands, your aspirations, your needs will drive you to get cozier and cozier. Your articulation, your behavioral matrix also will undergo change. So therefore, keeping in view the bottom line requirement of the survival instinct, one. Secondly, the economic dependence. Third and most important thing is Germany willy-nilly, if you recall, during the previous chancellor's regime or tenure, do you know that Germany, as chairperson of the European Union, was openly supporting China? These are the global geopolitical equations which are emerging. Now the chancellor is different. He's taking a balanced view. But so far, what has been prevailing for past 17 years has to manifest in some form or the other. So therefore, I would refrain from giving any kind of comment on the comment given by the erstwhile naval chief, because that is a point of controversy, which I also won't advise you. You people are in a growing formative state that you can download and go into the Google and find out. You'll get the accurate and very specific answer. But broadly, I have told you the geopolitical equations, the geoeconomics or the needs of Germany are such today that they are dependent on Russia to large an extent. Technology you talk about. You talk about the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution, if you all guys know what it means, it basically is being driven by the artificial intelligence, by IT of things, by the supply chain, by the servicing methods, by the virtual means of carrying out communications and trade. So without going further into the details, technology point of view, today Russia has got an edge. The economy may be floundering, but it is not as it is in Pakistan today. The economy is able to sustain itself because of huge or abundance of the oil and gas reserves that the country has. And the military hardware, like I told you, 69 to 70% of the military hardware of India are bought from Russia. So the dependence, by virtue of having been a superpower till the end of the Cold War, and thereafter the thing having got negated, Russia has bounced back. It has shown resilience in its economic prowess. It has started actually helping out people in the Middle East. You know how the Syrian battle went through. You know the Assad regime in Syria is still being intact despite all Western opposition. They wanted to remove him from the presidential candidates. And despite what is happening there in Iran and other places, Russia has its footprint. It is one of ours, I would say, an evergreen friend to India after 1971. Anytime anything we require, without a second thought, they have been extending all kinds of support to us. So that is all I can say to answer to you. You will find, if you Google the same thing in your net, you will come onto the specific point that you are looking for. I know what you are trying to ask. Go and do it. You will find the answer. I would refrain from giving any comment because it will put the session under a controversy. Yeah, next, please.
Sir,
Yeah.
I'm audible.
Yeah, very much. Just give your name and the place.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My name is Omkar Shahane from Maharashtra, Aurangabad.
Hello, Omkar. Aurangabad. How's Aurangabad?
Sir, historical city, sir. Well,
I've been
good.
to Aurangabad. Yeah, I drove down. We stayed there for a night. Thereafter, we drove down to Sai Baba place. Then from there to
Yes,
via
sir. The
Aurangabad.
Ajanta and Ellora Cliffs, sir.
Yes. Thereafter, we went to Pune, and it's a beautiful drive. Took us a long time, long distance, but the roads are good.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please come.
Yes, sir. I have a question, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, in the crisis, Ukraine and Russia, the role of India, sir. I want to just highlight what is the role of India, sir.
Yeah, yesterday this question was asked by somebody in the channel in a panel discussion. The role of India, you see, people have been criticizing India's role in Afghanistan. Look at the situation in Afghanistan, how it unfolded. It was unknown to even countries like America how it would unfold, contrary to their perception. So, out here, in my opinion, I personally feel if we have 69 to 70% of our defense hardware being imported from Russia, can you believe that the defense hub of defense industry of the Soviet Union used to be in Ukraine? Do you know that? The hub of defense industry. So if not 100% of the hub which is existent today, they at least have 50 to 60% of after all the erosion, dilution, shifting their lineage towards European Union and etc., coming under pressure from Russia. They still have the wherewithal. The economy is also based on a very, very profound, well-established defense industry. When I talk about the defense industry, without taking any specific, let me share with you. You have T-90 tanks you must have heard about, T-72, we have BMPs, we have a host of other equipments which are also being imported. So we have, our dependency is there with both the nations, one. Secondly, we would like to continue a good, healthy relationship with both the countries. This is my opinion. I don't feel right that India should take sides of anybody. Nobody wants a conflict. Nobody wants a war. War will be disastrous.
Okay.
The pandemic itself has taken the global economy to drain. Our own Indian economy, notwithstanding what we are talking, we have been talking about $5 trillion. But to get to $5 trillion, we should always catch up. It took us 60 years to have $1 trillion by 2007. It took us another 7 years. By 2014, we had $2 trillion. By 2019, we had $2.7 trillion. Came the December 2019, then the breakout of COVID pandemic, which came to light in February 2020. During pandemic, the economy has gone through a stage of growth of minus 7.5. If our mind is towards a progressive nation building of a $5 trillion Indian economy, I don't think it will be right to take sides with anyone. I'm not saying you apply your strategic autonomy, neither here nor there. Keep the national interest central. Wherever your national interest is being fulfilled, you maintain good relations without spoiling your relationship. If you are able to achieve your national interest, please take that course of action. That is my answer to your question, please.
Thank you. Got it.
Somebody, Nikita or someone is coming? Yeah. Please come. Anyone who wants to ask anything.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. My name is Anshika Upadhyay, and I want to ask you which kind of questions will ask in SSB interview, sir?
You have taken me to SSB. What's your name and which place are you calling from? Your name is not showing in the chat box.
So my name is Anshika Upadhyay. I'm from Ayodhya, Uttar Pradesh.
Oh, you're from the center of gravity of Uttar Pradesh. So how are things in UP?
Sir, it's good. It is a religious place of Lord Rama.
This is what they will ask you in SSB.
Okay, sir.
They will not take you far. They will not ask you about Ukraine or Indo-Pacific or anything. Something which is very close to your place. Ayodhya is a happening place of controversy. What would you say as a national leader or as a bureaucrat or as a military leader? What kind of comment are you going to give about Ayodhya?
Okay, sir.
Okay, they will not take you far. Are you clear about Lord Ramachandra's? Are you clear about the sequence of event of Ayodhya?
Yes, sir. I am clear.
Are you clear about the secularism? Because when I posted this in the Twitter, a lot of people had lots of polarized views about secularism. They thought I am a RSS man talking about this thing. So RSS is also not bad. Let's understand. Without pointing a finger at anybody, without casting aspersion against any religion, India is a classic example of pluralistic society, a secular society. Rest all are interim aberrations which will keep taking place. Okay, we cannot compare ourselves with US. US, after the revolution, became independent in 1776. Okay, when you compare the SDI indices or the parameters of two nations, 75, you add 75 years to 1776, check up their indices, the employment level, the literacy, the prenatal care, postnatal care, and other poverty, level of poverty below the poverty line. Okay, the education standards, the quality of life, other parameters, if you check up, you will find, and no country in the world has gone through what India has gone through in the past 75 years. Sanctions, conflicts, you count only 4 wars. I'm counting there are 7 wars. There are 3 wars which are ongoing continuously. Still the nation is, going ahead. Atmanirbhar Bharat or anything for that matter. So in SSB, they will not take you far off from your basic choice of life, your place where you belong to. Okay, like last time, if you're there in my class or not, what is your hobby? Do you play games and sports? In SSB, Vignesh wanted me to cover something day by day. Last time we covered the OLQ. So I had prepared a small little talk for day by day. What does the IO look for? See, they will ask you, what kind of games and sports do you play? I had said, during my time, I said cricket. But during the presidential interview, I broached the topic, sir, in such kind of selections, you must have basketball without knowing the meaning and implication of a terminology called a contact games. They also want to judge you that are you going to be a leader of rough and tough leader? Are you going to brush your shoulder with your men? Or you are going to play a non-contact game? Badminton, tennis, squash. These are non-contact games. What are the contact games? Contact games are where you rub, you fall, fight. Football, hockey, basketball. Okay, so since you are asking a question, so I thought, let me tell you, I was alluding to this point with Vignesh or somebody. Do they play games? Well, this is one of the things they will be asking. They will try to find out. Do you read books? Do you have the reading habit? Do you have a routine in your life? Do you read newspapers? If you read newspaper, then there are internal issues, there are technical issues, there are medical issues. I have spoken only about 5 trillion economy. So how do you take wherever we are today to a 5 trillion economy? Obviously, there has to be a clarity in your mind of your age that the economy can be divided in a pie diagram into 3 important segments. One segment will be agriculture, second will be manufacturing, industry, third will be your service sector. So where do we actually belong? Are we falling short in any of these? Just a minute, my laptop is going dead, so I'll just reconnect. Yeah, so in all these 3 points, So you got to know in 1947, we didn't have a census. In 1951, we had a census. So from that point of view, what was the status of the three paradigms or three verticals? And where are we today? Today, the service sector is around, if I'm not wrong, it's around close to 56, 54%. Agriculture is going down. The industry has improved from 17 to 21%. Okay, we need to. China's industry, this particular segment is close to 36.5 to 37%. Now, when you say industry, what does it mean? There has to be a core component. If you focus on this core component, then, rather than importing,
हो गया सर
you will be exporting the products. So it is the electronic industry which is going to give you. So going into the depth of issues that are closer to you, your functional parameters will take you through in your SSP. Yeah, next please.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon here. Good evening, sorry, sir.
Yeah.
Rajat here, sir. I'm from the Maharashtra, Kolhapur. So I have the question that's seeing the UN and the Ukraine war. So what is the role of the UN that it should be? What is the role of the UN that should take about this war? And after the taking that decision, what should be the decision after the Russia that it should be followed or not?
Okay, your voice was distorted. Anyway, if I have understood your question, basically you want to know the role of UN, one, and particularly in relation to the crisis, Ukraine crisis. And if UN gives any decision, will Russia abide by the decision or not? Have I understood your question?
Yes, sir. You are right, sir. It's my question.
Okay, fine. We all know why the UN was created. It came into being in 1945 after the World War was over. Okay, from League of Nations to United Nations organization. This is basically for, to prevent conflicts unfolding or taking place. Okay, similarly, UN also had a role when the Taliban was invading. Pakistan army was pushing the Taliban into Afghanistan. You think UN did not have a role to play? When UN is there to ensure a rules-based international order in the entire global perspective. The same is the case here in Ukraine. You have a point. I admire the point that you are giving. UN has a specific role to play in Ukraine. Why isn't UN doing anything to prevent the conflict? UN will do a particular thing only when the member states, the stakeholders, they approach UN. Now nobody has approached UN, to my understanding. Once they approach UN, then the UN is going to intervene. This is still in a stage of, asserting one's the economic power, the political power. The resilience have come about into Russia. Russia has gone through a very, very low phase after the disintegration. It is bouncing back to power now. It is trying to assert its authority. Enough is enough. I also was part of, Russia is the largest republic of USSR, Soviet Union. It has got all the components. The military might is there with Russia. I said, gone are the days I was being treated as a pushover. Now the time is up. You cannot keep encroaching, keep expanding your influence from wherever you are today, much against the commitment given in the Pact of 1997. The NATO cannot keep expanding its sphere of influence eastwards continuously. You have to put a check. That is what Russia is trying to negotiate for. To my understanding, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah.
So once again, Amit here. So let's if I ask you, let's go to basic now. Russia is trying to put the point that the missiles or the NATO missiles will come very closer to them. But if we see, they are already closer. They can cover about half of Russia. And what's the point in not helping or not giving Ukraine a chance to join NATO? And my second question is, like you said, India should always see its national interest. But when the India will be in a war situation, this kind of non-aligned position of India can we like it will be uh, disadvantageous for us in our worry situations.
Okay, Amit, you have asked two questions. The first question is if the NATO missiles are so close that it can hit any city of Russia anytime, isn't it? So, what is the big point in not allowing Ukraine to join NATO? Well, you have a good thought, but Russia doesn't think it right. Russia doesn't think it right because it is too close to Russia. How far is Moscow from Kiev? Have you seen it on the map? Until you orientate yourself and put your feet in the shoes of Putin, you will not understand as to why he is using this expression called as existential security threat. It is challenging the existence of Russia. That is why he is making noise. It is too close. He cannot afford to allow Ukraine to join NATO. He wants to redraw the commitment and the understanding. This is the fear. Nobody was understanding. He is pushing the envelope mainly to put pressure on Western powers to reconcile or review their understanding so as to realign themselves with Russia's perspective. This is what you have to understand. The Western powers are actually making pushovers and expanding, but Russia does not want that to happen. Now, China having come in a big way and supporting Russia, will that ever happen? Does any country, America, I have told you the status of America today, be it economy, be it the health, be it the industry, be it any kind of the critical technologies. Today, critical technology, China is way ahead of America. Okay, so under these circumstances, rather than to rebuild their nation internally, will they like to fritter away their very meager resources now at this point in time, given the fact of the way they left Afghanistan? I don't think so. I don't think so. So therefore, to answer your question, the answer is there in your question. What answer do I give you? You seem to be more aware and educated than anybody else. The second question you are asking was, what is the second one? India's non-alignment. No. You see, gone are the days. 1991 also to large an extent was a big watershed moment for India. If you recall, our economic liberalization started. We had placed our gold reserve with UK, taken money from them, and thereafter there was an economic boom. The non-alignment or the socialistic kind of progressive roadmap that India was following has taken a paradigm shift towards, I won't say a total capitalist, it is a balance of two. And we have made a significant headway. So today to say non-alignment is not the right terminology I would recommend you to use. I think we should use the strategic autonomy. India is an independent secular country. No other country in the world can coerce or put pressure on India to toe the line, their line. A case in point is S-400. India has come under acute pressure. I have been there in the service headquarters when the negotiations were going on. But despite all challenges and pressures coming from the US particularly, we held our gun. I said, no. This is the requirement. India requires S-400 because the third missile, anti-ballistic missile shield, that is not good enough to give protection to a country like India. We require something like S-400. And more than that, US is not a dependable country. Dependency doesn't come overnight. If you say once yes, at one point in time, unless that yes is assured and committed over a period of time, again and again, that commitment cannot be actually taken as something which is reliable. So for all these, I would say, I'm not saying non-aligned. What is the distinction? The line that you are trying to draw is to support the Western power, the European Union and the US, or to support USSR. These are the two two components you are trying to compare, or you are trying to compare support Ukraine, don't support Russia, or support Russia, don't support Ukraine. What I am saying is, you be in your balanced relationship with both Ukraine as also Russia.
No, sir, like we have seen, like newspaper are highlighting the things like the Russian are going in more friendship with China, which is like India can't afford it because we have existing issues like Galwan and Arunachal Pradesh happening in like India's streamline. So, would this affect India in this worry situation? Like we have still talks going on in Galwan, we have conflicts in Arunachal Pradesh. So, as a point, like the Russian influence over China or China helping Russia, can this be a critical situation to India? Because we have seen America taking side of Pakistan in 1971 war, and Russia being our most strategical partner in defense and their help in 1971 war. So I was trying to make a way in these situations.
No, fine. You have a point, what you are saying, Amit. I am glad that you're bringing up this point. All I would say in very short and sweet reply is, you see, notwithstanding the standoff between India and China, do you know this Corps Commander's talk started because of Russia's intervention in SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization? Do you know that? The talk was not beginning. The breakthrough in having a talk between India and China was not taking off at all. China was hell-bent. It is on the sideline of the SCO, which took place sometime last year, I think in October, November, December, sometime. It is the Russian foreign minister. He took the Chinese foreign minister aside, gave the initiative suggested that the talk must start. They are the facilitators. So this is how the enemy's enemy could be your friend. You understanding? There is nothing permanent in international relationship, in foreign affairs. What I have understood as a military leader is that to keep yourself binding and insulate your relationship with one understanding, one inflexible understanding, will be incorrect. So you have to keep your eyes and ears open, options open, whichever is working towards securing your national interest in the best possible manner should be adopted. Today, you are expressing your apprehension that Russia and China have joined hands with regard to Ukraine. Russia is our evergreen kind of a friend. Okay. By becoming closer to Russia, well, there is no denying the fact we are already close to Russia. But that does not mean that we'll start going against Ukraine. One. Second issue, with regard to China, will China's relationship with India take a negative turn? Further, will it precipitate the current situation which is prevailing in the border? Well, that may take place, that may not take place. Even if it takes place, India is fully prepared to face it. Okay, so don't worry on that. Don't worry. All I would say at your age and learning curve is that in international relationship, let's keep our options open, keep the national interest central. Do not restrict yourself by pre-selecting or pre-deciding your end state. Keep it open-ended, play it absolutely deftly, and keep the cards close to your chest. Use it to the advantage of the national interest and the requirement. That is all I can say. Now, Vignesh, we have done already, this is 5:35. Our timeline was from 4 to 5 and half an hour of question answer. Should we take a few more?
Sir, I'm Omkar again, sir.
Omkar, okay.
Yes,
This is the second Omkar, okay.
Yes, sir, yes. No, that's one, sir. Again.
Give it to somebody else. Yeah, Omkar, you go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sir, the Turkey president play a mediating role in Ukraine crisis. So the further ahead, sir, what is the means next, sir? Means how to resolve the crisis?
You see, since you're asking this question, you also know the answer. Okay. Here is a country which is trying to become a leader of the Muslim world. Pakistan for some point in time by having exploded and tested the nuclear bombs. Pakistan, incidentally, is the only Muslim country which has got the nuclear bombs, isn't it? It was trying to play the lead role. It has been grey listed. It has been grey listed. None other than the international organization, which is supposed to, carry out monitoring of support to the terrorism. Turkey also has been grey listed. Now, despite all challenges, the economy of Turkey is in doldrums. The currency has taken such a beating, it is falling, it is crashed. There are liras all over, and there is 1 rupee, Pakistan rupee, which has gone up to 175 rupees a dollar. There is a Turkey lira which has gone down so much that soon it may become a pariah state. Look at the chaos created. So to divert the attention of the population in Turkey, also to play, mind you, Turkey is a NATO country. It is a member. It is a member state of NATO. It is playing its own card to secure its position in the global level. It is trying to make itself relevant in the global order. Whereas the roots of Turkey as a nation state have taken such a deep beating that its survival as a nation state cannot last longer. So all these kinds of cosmetic activities will have no meaning, no substantive outcome when your own house is not in order. So therefore it's about time that Erdogan, rather than making peacenik moves here and there, should look within, bring order to disorder in his own country. These are my personal views. Back to you, please.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, it was wonderful interacting with each and every one of you. And at a very short notice, whenever Vignesh gives me a call, it was scheduled for yesterday. For some reason, we couldn't hold it yesterday, but then I had given a date of 11th of February. Then I realized that I may not be available. And I had told him that whatever is to happen will happen within next 7 to 10 days time. Okay. So whether it is going to happen or not, there are provocations, there are provocating statements being generated by the Western powers, the US, European Union. They're fabricating stories in a manner so as to provoke Russia to go in for the offensive. They've gone to the extent of saying that Russia will trigger some activity inside Ukraine against Russia so as to provoke Russia to attack or invade. Going by the Russian response and the kind of reportage I have been going through, I do not think this thing is going to take place so easily. Today, in COVID pandemic situation, a war of this nature is going to be highly cost prohibitive, not only to Russia, not only to Ukraine, but also to European Union, to NATO countries, and US itself. US economy, as it is in doldrums, it is not in a healthy state. So therefore, a war in Ukraine, in my opinion, is not going to be good to anybody. This also, keep in mind, you people are intelligent people. This could be a move to distract the attention of the global order from Indo-Pacific. AUKUS, your Quad, you have so many other resources who are not member of AUKUS and Quad. They have all concentrated there at Guam port. They are in Indo-Pacific. Japan has increased the defense budget. Taiwan has increased the defense budget. South Korea has joined in. 7 missiles having been test fired in 1 month's time by North Korea, a rogue state. That itself is a clear indication. So it is not time for the world to orientate our approach or roadmap towards a conflict anywhere in the world. Yemen is burning. Yemen, I'm sure you would have heard about this name, where the Shia and Sunni are battling there. They're fighting against each other. Saudi Arabia the 8 other Arabic nations against Iran. So these kind of conflicts are going to make the livelihood, make the humanitarian crisis much more acute than what we have seen and understood in Afghanistan and places alike. Yemen is one such country where the humanitarian crisis has become acute. There is no water, there is no medicine, there is no food, there is no shelter. There are almost about 2.3 million, 2.3 crores people who are without all this. 70% of this population is without basic requirement. So the world has to approach an orientation which will take us to peace, normalcy. Like somebody asked a question, I think it is Omkar, you only, about the United Nations. It's about time the United Nations and the apex organization in the global level, they play the role. Even if the mandate does not specify, it needs to be more proactive to intervene so that the conflicts do not take place. This is called as conflict prevention. Without being approached by the member states or the stakeholders, UN's job is to actually anticipate such kind of unfolding of events and take steps to actually diffuse tension. I fully agree with you. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I hope you could benefit from whatever little knowledge I had to share with you. And maybe next time we'll look forward to another engagement. Somebody was suggesting Myanmar. Somebody was suggesting some other nation state. You take your call, take your choice. We could have a discussion. Not that I am saying I am an expert in so-and-so subject. I am also going through my own this thing. I used to participate in panel discussion. For some reason, I have withdrawn myself from mainstream TV channels and national and international channels. I like interacting with the future generation like you all guys. I'm gaining a lot. I'm learning a lot. Thank you so much, each and every one of you. Thank you very much. Vignesh, back
Thank
to
you,
you.
sir.
Sir,
You have
I would like to thank our guest speaker, Mr. Sudhakar ji, for visiting and enlightening us with his knowledge. Today's session was full of knowledge about the ongoing crisis. His speech gave deep insight into the topic. On behalf of this Telegram channel, CDS OTA, once again I would like to thank Mr. Sudhakar ji for taking out his time from his busy schedule and enlightening us with his knowledge. Thank you so much, sir, and also thank you for all the participants for paying your attention and learning. I would end my speech here. Thank you.
Thank you, Soumya. Thank you, Vignesh. Thank you, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. If there is anything, any suggestion from anybody, you're most welcome. You can take my contact number, take my email. You can contact me. Thank you so much.